Hi, and welcome back to the Positive Prepper. Thank you for coming back to view this first video in our 4-part series. This video is going to cover food insecurity. And there's a lot of information in this video, so I'm going to try to get through this quick because I don't want to have a really long video, but I want you to have the information. So a Wisconsin-based producer of edible beans handles about 35% of all the edible beans in the United States. According to them, the United States production will tumble about 56% in 2022. And this is due to farmers planting other high-value crops. Oh, excuse me. So basically 56% of all edible beans will not be produced in the United States. That's a huge, huge drop. Ukraine and Russia are not going to harvest wheat and sorghum this year. That is probably going to increase the chance for a global famine. These two countries make up about 80% of sunflower oil exports. So just to kind of give you an idea of where things are at, in Egypt, the typical worker makes about $95 a month, the equivalent of. A loaf of bread right now for them is $5 for a loaf of bread. Okay, so you can see how it's just becoming increasingly tangible. This food shortage and the food insecurity that's happening. Food insecurity may cause more war, and the U.S. is not prepared to come to their aid or to prevent our own food insecurity and famine that could happen here. In the early 2010s, an event called the Arab Spring occurred in response to corruption and economic stagnation. It was a series of anti-government protests in the Arab region where there were riots, civil wars, and insurgencies. A major slogan at that time for the Arab people was, "The people want to bring down the regime." Okay, a lot of people were starving, things were really in chaos, and they wanted to bring the whole thing down. They were very anti-government. This is very likely to reoccur globally if governments hoard food for the elites while the people of their countries are starving. Ukraine is one of the major suppliers of grain to the international markets, but the port of Odessa has been closed. And with the war occurring, the grain won't be going out. Food prices all over the globe will be higher than ever with inflation for those food products being in the double digits. Some people believe that food prices could go as high as 50% or more. And we know that there are some food prices that are already approaching, if not into, the triple-digit percentage increase. This almost certainly is going to lead to food insecurity and acute hunger. Another example, according to the United Nations, Afghanistan is facing extreme starvation. 95% of Afghans are not getting enough to eat, and it's almost at 100% starvation in households where there are no fathers. They've had extreme drought, economic issues, war, everything that has contributed to their famine in their country. But the United States is not immune to this issue. In a survey done according to Forbes magazine, thousands of people who work at grocery stores are unable to afford the groceries that they ring up and bag up for other customers. Places like Walmart and Kroger's have huge issues with workers who are on assistance because they can't afford to feed their families on the low wages. Now think about the increasing prices across the globe, but wages are not keeping up with that inflation. People will begin to get desperate to feed their families. Many people already are very desperate to feed their families. And this creates some negative consequences. First, people will do whatever it takes in desperation, and that is partly why the theft of food and gas is becoming so prevalent. Second, if parents have to work 2 or 3 jobs now to make ends meet, then children are living in homes where there might be no family structure anymore. They're living in an environment of constant anxiety. Parents might be doing unhealthy things in order to provide that food and putting themselves in risky situations. That is a huge negative consequence of food insecurity. Some schools were already having a hard time providing hot meals to their students, who for many was the only hot meal they received for that day. So if the prices continue to increase, this burden for schools will become more difficult to mitigate. The homeless people, they rely on the kindness of strangers, but they won't be able to eat because strangers won't have the extra money to give them. And food banks, if they get an increase in clientele, won't be able to help in the way they have via soup kitchens and other forms of outreach, because they are going to be hurting for food. Many active military members and veterans have had food insecurity throughout history, and I think I talked about this in one of my other videos. Though they should be the first ones to receive help, they are often unwilling to seek it. But Congress finally allowed a basic needs allowance in the National Defense Authorization Act of 2022, which gives low-income military families extra money to put food on the table. Now, only time will tell if they included enough to count for the rising prices of almost everything across the board: your food, gas, housing, electricity, etc. So the rising food prices don't just come from the food itself and production, but also from contributing factors such as the rise in fertilizer, feed, and energy. As the cost to produce, manufacture, ship, and distribute the food goes up, those prices ultimately are passed on to the consumer. Crops rely on good nutrients to produce high yield and quality, and that typically comes from fertilizers. The cost of producing nitrogen-rich fertilizer is directly linked to the cost of fuel. So remember, I said in my introductory video that you cannot separate the oil from the wheat, and this is absolutely true, and another example of that. Because of the high prices of fertilizers, farmers may use less, which in turn reduces the yield and the quality. Russia and Ukraine are major producers and suppliers of fertilizers and raw materials. Here we go again. Everything's intertwined. Yara, which is a Norwegian company, for example, is the biggest producer and supplier of fertilizer for Europe. However, much of its products are made in, you guessed it, Ukraine. Brazil is a major importer of fertilizer from Russia. Now, instead of paying 2 to 3 million reals for fertilizer and pesticides, they're paying 20 million reals. This has a huge impact on the amount you will spend on coffee in the coming months, if they can't come up with a more plentiful and low-cost fertilizer. So you see how everything just is, tied to everything else. If one goes down, another goes down, and then another goes down, and then another goes down. So if you take all of these things and you add to it the worsening climate conditions, the droughts, the fires, the storms, tornadoes, I am not a huge believer in climate change in the way that it is being presented. The sun has, and the sun cycle has a lot to do with our weather patterns. But you can see how all of this points to a growing food insecurity issue. So I'm going to give you 10 things that you can do to help prepare yourself for that, or help get more food on the table, perhaps. So the first one is pack away as much grain as you can, including rice and wheat. You can buy them, you can seal them up, and you can store them away, and start getting as much of that kind of stuff put away as you can. Purchase heirloom seeds for things like corn and beans. Here in Wisconsin, we're coming into our growing season. Our planting season shortly, and then our growing season. But if you grow these things, you can be more reliant upon your own gardens rather than buying these things from a store. Number 3, prioritize your spending. That's a tough one. If you are living on a tight budget, it's already hard enough to budget in all the bills and living expenses and food. We all know that. We've all been there, done that, or are still there. But when you're grocery shopping, leave out the things that you can do without. So drink water instead of pop. Buy off brands rather than main brands. And trim your weekly menus as much as you can. If you're a major coffee drinker, do price comparisons between whole coffee beans and ground coffee. Beans sometimes can be found cheaper, although then you'd have to buy a grinder to grind up the beans if you go that route. But do a lot of price comparison. Different stores, different brands, beans versus ground. And try to find the cheaper solution so that you can buy more without it costing so much. Number 4, use coupons. It takes a lot of time and energy to cut and organize coupons to match your shopping list, but it can save you money on groceries and household products. 20 cents here, 10 cents there. It does add up, so use coupons when you can. Instead of buying cleaning products, use vinegar and water or bleach, and then use that savings to buy food. Along with that, use washable cloths instead of paper towels. Yes, paper towels are more convenient, but you can save money if you're not having to keep stocking up on paper towels, right? You can also Google, there is a way to make like the Clorox wipes, you can actually make those with paper towels, and I think it's vinegar, water, and dish soap. There's ways that you can do things that can save money so that you have more money to either put food on your table or gas in your vehicle. Number 6, use the minimal amount of shampoo, conditioner, body wash, toothpaste, things like that to make it last longer. The money you save from buying these types of things can be, again, spent on food. When you wash loads of laundry, make sure that your loads are full. Don't do half loads. You can wear jeans a couple, 2-3 times before you have to wash them. That saves you a load a week right there. And then, again, use the least amount of detergent needed and only one dryer sheet in the dryer per load. And I know that these things kind of seem trivial, but in the long run and over time, these things, especially if things get super bad, these are all things that can really help you save money to put towards food and or gas in your car versus all of these other household expenditures. Number 8, clean out your cabinets right now. If you have non-perishable foods in there that you won't use or that you can do without, donate them to a food shelf or a food bank. So that helps you make space for the things that you will eat, but it also helps the food shelf feed others. Okay? I know that, we've had over the years, we've had people come and go, and they've bought or brought things that, we figured out we probably weren't going to use. And that's exactly what we did. We went through, cleaned all that stuff out, cake mixes, pudding mixes, canned, like sauerkraut, things that we knew we weren't going to eat. We put all that together and we either donated it to the food shelf or we gave it to other family members who were in need of food. So it helps you, but it also helps others doing that. Number 9, plan your gas. Plan your outings so that you are using the least amount of gas necessary, especially if you are getting into the position of choosing gas in your car or food on the table. So do things like stopping at the store on your way home from work rather than making a special trip. You might have to lessen the after-school activities your children are involved in if it requires you to drive them to and from practices. Okay, but if you keep them in the after-school activities and you have to drive them, then again, use that time to get some of your other stuff done so you're not having to make a special trip. Every little bit that you can save is going to help. Okay? And the last one, do what you can to cut down on your living expenses. If you are paying for phone, internet, cell phones, cable, those types of things, where can you eliminate or reduce cost? For example, we got rid of, I used to have a major cable provider. I was being charged, it was like $140 a month just for that subscription. We went to Roku instead, because you buy the stick and you get all kinds of free programming on there without paying anything else. So, it was a one and done purchase, and we saved a ton of money a month just by doing that one thing. So look at all of your household bills and determine where you can cut some things out so that you have more money for food and or gas. Here in Wisconsin, it's spring. We've been in the 40s and 50s. So we're trying to reduce the amount of heat that we need in the house. And sometimes that gets a little chilly, but it reduced the energy cost, right? Simple things like shutting off your lights and unplugging your appliances when not using them. That all saves on your overall living expenses and allows more money in your pocket for food and or gas. So I hope this video has helped in some way to understand why food shortages and insecurities will be here for a while, if not increasingly getting worse, if we stay on the path that we're on. We cannot be complacent, and this is a theme that will be in all 4 of these videos. We cannot be complacent on any of this. We can't think that the grocery stores are always going to be full and that we'll always be able to afford to eat, especially if you're already in a place now financially where you don't have to struggle. It's easy to think, I won't have to worry about that. But that complacency will leave you starving if you haven't prepared for it. So don't be complacent in it. Start now doing things that save you those extra few dollars to put food on the table or gas in your vehicle. If you are feeling the struggle already, and believe me, you are not alone in that, and it's been a difficult road for you, I want to leave you with this verse of strength from the book of Matthew. Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. In other words, give the Lord your burdens and take his yoke instead. Know him, and you will find rest and a lighter load to carry. I look forward to your comments and discussions in this first video of 4. The next video will be coming out tomorrow. Take care and God bless always.